session. So, it may be worth discussing what is ecosystem development, because this is quite a new term and it's quite unique to crypto.
Yeah, so ecosystem development kind of encompasses a lot of things. So it might be how to build the ecosystem from the inside, how to reach out to people on the outside who might want to build on your tech, who those people might be, like identifying what's the best use of your time to figure out who you should be targeting, and also to figure out, to have a good feeling of what goes on in the ecosystem, what types of things might be missing, and how to get those things. I mean, they might be other applications or games, or it might be oracles, or it might be any of these things. And so it kind of falls under us to figure out what is the ecosystem, what could or should it be, and how do we get there? I think it's probably the easiest tagline to say.
Yeah, and how do you think it differs from normal sort of business development then?
I can jump in here. So I think that, rather than business development, where, I think it's a little bit more related to the instant gratification side of things, like the ecosystem development, we're trying to cater towards more of the actual needs of the ecosystem partners or participants. We're looking for people that are like-minded, trying to solve problems or solve long-term problems, as opposed to, like I said, the instant side of things, the instant gratification. We're trying to create like a stage where people can build and succeed, as opposed to just like selling a service and product. So I think it's a lot about giving people a sense of belonging, and finding a balance between what the business is supposed to be, and creating a useful product or service for a larger community.
Yeah, it's also a lot more loose than business development, I think usually is referred to in other industries. So it's like there's a lot of times we do things without like formal agreements on everything, and it's trying to essentially build like the ecosystem and the community at the same time. And I think the biggest difference is that has this kind of informality to it, because so many of the things that we do and that happen in crypto are kind of, they don't really have a protocol to do these things with. So it's everybody kind of doing everything that has to do with the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, it's an all-encompassing term, isn't it, really?
Mm.
But so it sounds like you've got a big challenge on your hands, but a fun one at that.
Yeah, it certainly takes some creativity. I think that's like the most enjoyable part about what I do, at least how I see it, because it is such a complex problem to be like, there's like multiple cold start problems that you have, and you have to figure out like how to get everything moving. We have the advantage at IOTA that we've had a community for a very long time. A lot of these other protocols don't have this asset, so they have to figure out how to essentially bootstrap an entire community out of nothing, and usually that means just paying grants and calling, for instance, just calling airdrop hunters community or some kind of workaround like that. But yeah, I think there's certain aspects that advantages that we have from being older in crypto terms.
Yeah, we've got some real OG projects with us, don't we? That probably makes your job a little bit easier.
Yeah. They also give us some new connections too, because they've been with us for so long. Like, it also helps because we know I think we have a better idea who we can trust. And I think how much you can trust a project or a person is kind of underrated in crypto, because a lot of people are just an anime girl profile picture on Twitter. So it's hard to actually know what's going on.
Yeah, or a guy with glasses looking like a poet.
Yeah, or a bong bear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And, we've discussed that the ecosystem development is quite a wide term, but how does then Touchpoint fit into that?
I don't know, you want to take that one, Chris?
Yeah,
it's
sure.
Kind of your baby.
Sure. So I think Touchpoint actually came into existence when we also started going into smart contract development, right? With a fundamental realization that we need to foster these loose connections, and we need kind of a framework that's flexible enough to allow these loose connections to form, and that makes it easy for us to actually add people, introduce people, connect people, exchange insights, knowledge, ideas, and kind of move along, right? And so Touchpoint for us fulfills, I would say, two roles. In the one way, it's a more builder-focused community inside the larger IOTA community and Shimmer community, where we can onboard projects into, and where those projects can actually then, come together, ask questions, also work together on specific topics, and where we can also then onboard additional, let's say, service providers, third parties, that they can use to overcome specific challenges. So I would say on the one hand, it can be a home, or we like to call it collective, for the builders inside our ecosystem. And then on the second part, I think it has an outward-facing role. Whereas when we go out and talk to builders that are not yet in our ecosystem, we can also use Touchpoint as a simple way to onboard them rather quickly into our ecosystem, right? So it kind of becomes almost as a selling point, and a guide where we can take people by the hand and get them in front of the relevant people, either from the IF, right, or also from other projects, from other builder teams, and make sure that they find a home really quickly inside our ecosystem, and are not like they just come into the big IOTA Discord, don't know who to talk to, then talk to Antonio maybe, but then there's not really a clear path into the builder community, and I think that's what we're trying to do in an outward facing way.
Yeah, we also, what I like to add is, what it does is give people a chance at any stage to kind of get their foot in the door. I think that, now we're seeing there's a lot more people that know a lot about, or know a little bit about cryptocurrency, and the blockchain space. And, what is pretty interesting is there's a lot of other ecosystems, but in these other networks, it's often pretty much like a gated community. And we try and kind of create that bridge to enable people that aren't necessarily familiar with different types of ecosystems within the crypto space, and kind of give them that floor, or the stage where they can, be a part of something new, but also, have access to things that have already existed and the resources that they wouldn't necessarily have if they just jumped into crypto as a whole. So we try and be that stepping stone for different projects or different teams that are trying to get involved for the first time.
Yeah, so you're really that intermediary then between the IOTA Foundation and the developers, and then also the community projects out there.
And I think
That
maybe
bridge.
a really good example of how Touchpoint can be useful is as we hinted at in the beginning, the testnet campaign that's running right now, where you have, on the one hand, you have the OG projects in the ecosystem, right? A Shimmer C, maybe a TangleSwap, and you have ApeDAO. They're all in there. And they have been looking at Shimmer and IOTA as a technology for quite a long time, right? So they know the quirks quite well. They're following the updates really closely. So, and then you have other projects that come in, or either it's maybe one or two developers pushing something as a side project, or it's an ecosystem external project that wants to also look at Shimmer and deploy there. And so we can connect those people, right? So there's, for example, a project that needs a liquidity pool for their token, then you connect them to the DEXs, right? And that just facilitates the exchange and potential collaboration rather quickly. And then you have individual developers that maybe really care about the technical intricacies of a protocol, and they look at the code and then also raise issues in there to discuss it with other community members, or with a group of projects that come together to actually work out a solution for these issues. So I think the more we progress onto mainnet, I think the more these collaborative aspects of Touchpoint will come into focus, and the one-on-one alignment part between maybe us as foundation and the projects will take a step backward.
Looks like Jamie might be frozen.
Also, maybe Adam, let's continue with the interview here, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in general, I think one question that we might want to talk about is the importance of having ecosystem development as a specific function in permissionless ecosystems, right? Because fundamentally, smart contract environments are permissionless. Everybody can drop in and build, but maybe just give a little summary of why you think that there's still a need for kind of an ecosystem development function and team there.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think some people may have the opinion that if you just build the tech, these people, the developers are going to come out of the trees or out of the woodworks and just start deploying on it. And to an extent, that does happen a bit, especially because we're a new ecosystem, but still have these like old roots. Hey, Jamie. And
guys,
so, yeah, no worries. So I'm answering the question of why do you need ecosystem development teams at all? Why can't the tech just kind of stand on its own feet? It's because the tech has to be kind of useful for people, and it's part of our job too on the outreach side to kind of convince parts of the space of why it's useful and what they can do on IOTA and Shimmer that they can't do in other places. It's also one of these things you can do here and not in other places necessarily is, like I alluded to earlier, is like to be at a place that has an established community. And these things, they happen very slowly on their own. Like maybe in the first days of when Ethereum came out and when smart contract networks, like it was the main and only smart contract network. If you wanted to go to a place, that's where you went. Of course, this is not the case now. There's hundreds, thousands of smart contract networks. And so ecosystem development has to be kind of a way to like strategically target people who would be good for your community, because I would say that not everybody is. And because we have this protocol in this community and we have a vision for maybe how it should be. And so it's really up to us in ecosystem development writ large is to like, how do you go from having the community and ecosystem that you want, and how do you actually get that? So this is kind of how I normally think about it.
And one thing that I'd add is, landscapes are changing constantly in this space, and, staying up to date, trying to be like with what Adam said, there's tons of smart contract networks. There's tons of competitors to the different networks. And, if we can be ahead of the game in terms of, how we are observing other networks and what the next trend is going to be, then we have a better chance of making our ecosystem stand out amongst others. That's pretty much one of the most important things to me. It's trying to stay up to date with, what's actually changing around the wider ecosystem space in crypto, and how can we kind of leverage what our tech and leverage what we or our community has to offer to try and bring on new partners and just, I guess, stay ahead of the game.
And also what people even care about. So you have our community. We have our community now. We have maybe we imagine the community might be 6 months from now. What types of things do people want to do in crypto? Kind of somewhat famously in IOTA back in 2017, we thought that everything would be an Internet of Things dynamic. And now there's this revealed preference that people want to do DeFi and use stablecoins, do NFTs, and do other Web3 stuff like DAOs. And these things can't be ignored. We have to think about what is the revealed preference for why people use DLTs. And I also include this in the remit of ecosystem development.
Yeah, so TwitchPoint seems to me as a sort of outsider looking in, really like a bridge to new projects coming in, but also a bridge to the wider crypto space as well. So that's really interesting.
With the one caveat here that there's been some confusion that, and part of it is our own fault, is that when we've traditionally used TouchPoint to mean two things, us three and Corey as the people who run the program. So we have kind of TouchPoint, the program itself, and then TouchPoint as us. And over time, it became obvious that these were different things, that there's the program of TouchPoint and then there's ecosystem development at large. And I agree with your statement, but only to say that we have, as we're growing, it looks like we have our ecosystem development tasks, of which I would include outreach and strategy, and then TouchPoint, which is the program, how we make it useful. And that has, of course, a strategy and a design with it as well. I feel like you froze again. Okay. So let me get this notes up.
So maybe just sticking with Touchpoint the program, right? There you go, Jamie. You're back.
Oh yeah, it seems to keep doing that. So just one thing before we get too far, but if there is anyone in the chat, please make some noise and drop some messages in there as well and say hi. We want to see who's listening. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
But I will hand over back to you. I was just going to ask a question, but you
right, yeah.
dropped in again.
Oh yeah. So I mean, do you see any other ecosystems that have a similar type of program?
I can hop in here. So, I think that this is something that I kind of take pride in. I think that, Touchpoint is a little bit different than what other ecosystems have to offer. I think, there's definitely builder support programs, launch pads, things along those lines. But what Touchpoint does is gives people the immediate access to our team, members of the IF, and then different members in the community. And like I said before, like we're connecting or we're trying to give people at any stage of development a chance to connect with people that may have faced similar pain points in the past or are stuck at certain roadblocks. And what we like to, or what we can actually say is that as soon as you enter the door into our ecosystem or the Touchpoint program, you have access to all of these things. You can work off of other people's success and honestly work off of their failures to try and figure out ways to move forward. And to talk about other ecosystems, like I came from the Ethereum ecosystem early on. And, I think, as I said before, there's a pretty big gated community there where, if you aren't an OG, it's kind of hard to get your foot in the door. And I would say that's pretty common around different ecosystems. And a lot of the times, we see all these alternative networks where projects are, building on them from the get-go. And I think that these protocols end up, I guess, losing traction because they don't offer this long-term support where, what we're trying to do is create a sustainable ecosystem as opposed to, really allowing for tokens to launch and then, just kind of letting the projects go on their own. I mean, obviously we're not, restrictive or trying to, choose which projects are moving forward. But at the same time, we like to be able to offer that support for anyone who does need it. And yeah, I mean, I think that's a very big difference that we see in our network relative to, many of the other ones, even the larger ecosystems.
I should say there's probably also the aspect of execution, because I know projects who've been in other types of builders programs, and some of them just aren't run very well. And I personally have not been in these other ecosystems or in those builders programs, but I mean, I spend a lot of time in Touchpoint, and I got to think that we're pretty good at responding and being there when projects, if they have a concern, whether or not we can immediately fix it or not. But I think at least our team, all recognizes the importance of Touchpoint in the success of IOTA and Shimmer. And I think we allocate our time appropriately there and make sure that those strong teams that are building on the protocols, that we're giving them every chance of success that we can, and that we can really put our weight behind them.
Yeah, because were you involved at all with the testnet campaign then?
Me personally, no. I think this was more Chris's lane, at least out of the three of us here. But maybe you speak to that.
I think just in terms of coordination, I was involved, and then on the test and earn side. But I would say, so this included kind of coordinating with the projects that participate, right? We tried to channel information to them actually before the campaign started, just to make sure that the concepts make sense and that also there's solid interest from projects to participate, right? Because it doesn't make sense to launch that campaign and then we have no participating projects. And then really just shepherding them also through the onboarding process to participate in the campaign at the end. But then all the community-facing parts, the Zeely coordination, the dashboards, all of that was done by comms and also by Antonio from the community team. So a little bit involved in the background, not too much in the outward-facing parts.
Yeah, because I think that really shows how strong the Shimmer and IOTA ecosystem is, because I really think it has been a strong success. I don't know. Obviously, you're in touch with the projects every day. What's the feedback you're getting on that as well?
So I think on definitely successful in terms of also giving us feedback on the EVM and what we would need to improve, right? Because it's just really nice to get a network properly stress tested before you go live, or before you hit mainnet. And I think you can simulate lots of things, but you can't really simulate really live environment, right? With testers, community members testing, projects deploying. Just also the projects focusing on deploying their DApps has been super helpful, because that uncovered some improvements that we can make on the EVM part. And then also on the coordination part, quite frankly, like we learned, I think, a lot as Touchpoint team, also how to coordinate better between projects, how to coordinate better between the projects and ourselves as the foundation. And then I think as a team, it also helped us really adjust to having something that is live, right? Before, we were always preparing for eventually launching the technology and then going live. And then now the testnet campaign is the first time that we have something that resembles a live environment, where things break maybe during the weekend, right? Or you have to respond fast because it actually is visible for everybody that there are some issues. So I think we'll definitely learn as a team from that as well. And then I think just in terms of success of the campaign itself, I think it's just amazing to see all these DApps live. And I think we have actually really high quality DApps there. Amazing front ends, also really nice functionality. I think, for example, looking at the Shimmer Fair launch, right? How they actually launched their project all the way through. That's really interesting. We have Deeper as a beautiful protocol. We have TangleSwap. We have a bunch of really cool applications, and just seeing that and showing that, I think, is really, really nice.
Yeah, it seems it'll battle test Shimmer EVM, but also the Touchpoint team and the Touchpoint project as well, I suppose. And have you had any projects reach out to you on the back of the testnet through the Touchpoint program or anything like that, or more interest?
I mean, I had one, and maybe it's not the venue that most people would expect, but I was at 2 conferences in the past week, and then I talked a little bit about Shimmer and Touchpoint, and then immediately this person found me afterwards and said he wanted to come over to the protocol, and he runs this multi-chain DEX aggregator, and he's like, hey, I really like what you guys are doing, and I'd followed IOTA from a while ago, and now it's nice to see that they're doing something again, or doing something public and being loud about it. And so I think that they're kind of indirectly, the Shimmer testnet campaign helped out, because it's much easier to onboard a project if you say, hey, look, we hit 1 million transactions yesterday, and you show them the Explorer, and and it's been easier to talk to other projects. So for instance, there's another crypto layer 1, and I had talked to 2 of their gaming projects who are now in Touchpoint, and being able to say, hey, this is what's happening. The testnet's been live for a month. This is how the testnet campaign is working. This is what our activity looks like. These are the main players in the ecosystem, and this is kind of what we have to offer as an ecosystem. Some of the things I alluded to earlier, and having the testnet campaign there also shows like a level, I think, of seriousness that you can pull off these campaigns, because it's kind of complex parts. Like, how do you use Zeely? How do you determine what's a bot and what's not? How do you wrangle all the different smart contracts into make it to where whatever incentivization you're giving, airdrop or whatever, that it goes to the right place? And so I think indirectly the campaign has helped me do my job, or at least part of it, on the outreach side.
Yeah, it'll make things easier. As you said, you got something tangible you can show people now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so in that respect, what are you guys working on at the moment then? Can you give us a bit of a behind the scenes of what's going on?
Sure. I think one important aspect of it is rounding up some infrastructure players as well, making sure that there's, you have the mainnet that we want to launch, but there's all these infrastructure components that go around it. So this might be oracles, right, which we're working on, identifying additional Oracle providers, working with the first one to actually make sure that data is available in a timely manner, right? So this is another thing where we're coordinating between different projects to just work with the first Oracle provider, Pith, that they have data in the frequency they need. Then it's about adding infrastructural components. It's about working with bridges, and then all these things to make sure that we have a rounded up ecosystem, right? That kind of works smoothly through launch. And then, as Adam already said, it's really going back to as many projects as possible, either ones we had contact with previously, and actually showing them it's getting serious, right? Now is the time to think about deploying. Now is the time to get ready. Then it's also reaching out to new ones on the back of the campaign with really a proven technology that they can use, and trying to first maybe position Shimmer in their heads, right? Get them interested in it, and then convert them either into Touchpoint or directly onto the network. And the third part, I think, is also working with not projects, but other groups in crypto, right? It might be liquidity providers, might be some other players in that area, and make sure that the network is not only running and that there is applications, but there's also it's usable, right? Because you need on DeFi, you need liquidity, just to make sure that people can actually trade on all the applications that you have. In NFTs, you need artists, you need drops, you need kind of people doing something with the technology. And I think that's also an important aspect we're looking at right now.
Yeah, Spec would like to hear that, some more whales.
Yeah, actually, we had some good piece of feedback that someone's Telegram. This is a Touchpoint project. They were like, "Yeah, the Telegram group I'm in, like the DeFi whale group, a lot of people are talking about Shimmer now." So that was encouraging to hear. There's some other things that we do outreach wise, so that I'd be kind of remiss not to say, which is going back to a lot of exchanges, because now that we have an ERC20 token kind of around the corner, it will be able to open up conversations to make them essentially list us more readily. Because beforehand, if you're like, "Hey, list us," they're like, "Okay, cool. What's your tech stack like?" And we'll be like, "Okay, well, here it is," and nobody else uses it, so you have to pretty much tailor make it. And this either means that the timelines are increased or the integration costs are up. But of course, everybody knows how ERC20 tokens work, and the version of Shimmer on the Shimmer EVM mimics the ERC20 token for the most part. So it's very easy for them to integrate. So kind of a lot of like circling back to these exchanges that we had talked to a while ago who said, "Hey, talk to us when the ERC20 token is out there." We've been doing that. I had a conversation with Exchange this morning on this exact subject. And also how to get liquidity in from other ecosystems. So having essentially like a wrapped Shimmer strategy. So how do you get like on PancakeSwap or Uniswap or, any of these to say, okay, we have our own version of wrapped Shimmer over on their chain. And then this makes it a little bit more usable and makes it where we can make kind of incentivize or makes the bridge a little bit easier from people coming from other ecosystems or making the Shimmer token more usable.
Oh, and like who would make the Shimmer on the other chains, the wrapped Shimmer?
Now, who specifically is kind of, we're still working out. This is something that, to be honest, I've really started thinking about this week mostly. So I don't want to say something and end up having to backtrack tomorrow when I look into it further and be like, "Oh shit, that was wrong." But it would be mainly like how to get it on to where it's easily listed on a front end of one of these other dexes. Because, if you're familiar with how you do, if you're on Uniswap and you can put in any random token addresses you want, right? And it'll operate it. But they also have pre-listed addresses, like here's the CoinGecko addresses and here's whatever. And then if you put in your own, it'll be like, "Hey, everybody, watch out for this one." It's not verified or anything. So I guess the question is how to make it to where it looks legit enough or as possible, and to pick the right the projects that will make the Shimmer token itself the most successful.
Because I think
Yeah.
getting the token onto a different chain is possible through the bridges we're working with, right? So multi-chain, for example, can create a wrapped version of Shimmer, which is essentially just the other way around of getting, for example, USDC from Ethereum onto Shimmer, which is just creating a wrapped representation. They can do that same thing with Shimmer on Ethereum, for example. And then as Adam was saying, the more important question is actually who's going to use it, right? Because just having the representation there, if no one's using it, is not going to be too helpful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never thought about it that way. I suppose it does work both ways, doesn't it? It's getting more tokens, etc., on our ecosystem, but also getting our tokens onto the other ecosystems.
Something I wanted to add, but I had some mic issues. But things that are in the works right now. So one way to stand out, like I said, was trying to be ahead of the trends. And for me, one of the most important things is trying to figure out what are the things that are moving forward in the wider ecosystem. So I think that we have our core applications that, as Christian said, are really great from the front end perspective, from the functionalities that they provide. But one of the things that I like to focus on is trying to bring in these more niche projects from other ecosystems or that are just being created to be the chain that they launch on. And so, some of those things include like the bridge between NFTs and DeFi. So NFT finance, like that's something that may not be familiar to most people that are, accessing smart contracts for the first time, but it might be an attractive way to create a new wave of prospective like new users into our space or our ecosystem. And these are things that are like, I think they're definitely more unique for me personally. Like NFT derivatives were something that were very interesting to me because looking at like token prices and trying to trade options on these things is a little bit less, or it's a little bit more complex in my mind than being able to look at a picture or a JPEG and like trying to make the trades in that sense. So I think that it bridges this, like there's ways to bridge like unique functionalities that haven't really happened in crypto before. And yeah, I mean, that's just something that's very interesting to me. I think that, the NFT finance side of things and the real world assets side of things is probably like right around the corner or turning a corner right now. And, hopefully we can be ahead of the game when we try and onboard partners in that sense. But yeah, I had a few mic issues, so I couldn't add that on in time.
Good job you sorted it, because that's useful to hear, Austin. And you seem to have your finger on the pulse when it comes to just the whole sphere of crypto. So, I mean, what are you most excited about going forward in terms of what IOTA, Touchpoint, Shimmer can get involved with?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that, the bridge between like NFTs have become a popular thing in the last couple of years, but we've seen them like in a very basic form where it's collections and, how does this art or how do these unique collections, how are they attractive to certain people? And I think in the future, we're going to see non-fungible tokens have a lot more utility in terms of, and I hate using that word because when you looked at a collection back in the day and, everyone was throwing the word utility out. And to me, that's just not, there was never any substance behind it. But in the future, I think, we're going to see these real world assets come into play. And then, NFTs as financial instruments, they will like, hopefully that is something that will be really attractive to, traditional financial people and institutions. And hopefully it's a way to kind of, I guess, stay in line with the regulatory, guidelines that are coming out into our ecosystem, or not our ecosystem, but in crypto as a whole. Because, I think with more people understanding a little bit about crypto and there's more eyes on it, the regulation is, it's going to come, and it's already, here in a pretty significant way. So, hopefully as things go on, the development of I guess you just say like more developed products is the way that we're going to be able to, I guess, push the boundaries or get right along the lines of things that are, within the bounds of the regulatory picture.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that's great. That's interesting because there's a lot of people who doubt the usages, just to go back to the NFT point, usages of NFTs. It seems to divide even the crypto space at times. Mm-hmm. So you're a pro NFT supporter, which is useful. I mean, not that we need to label people.
Well, I think, an important thing for me is like, if you like the art, you like the art, but the profile picture side of things is a different, it will attract a different audience than I think what NFTs can be in the future. And, I think that from my perspective, NFTs might be a very interesting way of attracting people that are from Web 2 or traditional financial minds. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that. I would love to see how that kind of pans out in the next couple of years.
Yeah. And looking into the future, what's the future for TouchPoint then? How is it going to evolve?
So I think there's some areas where we can evolve, some where we probably want to double down. And I think I hinted at it earlier. I think what we're seeing right now is that we're shifting focus a little bit from working with individual projects and aligning with them, because I think prior we were in this wait and see kind of phase where we were just trying to keep projects up to date, and they had questions, and we would go back and forth with them individually. So we spent a lot of time one-to-one kind of aligning with projects. And I think what we're seeing right now is that it's shifting to multiple projects working together on some specific topics, on some specific ideas. With Oracles, it's that way. The campaign is actually just one other example there. So hopefully it's shifting more towards a collaboration model. I think also it's going to be more and more important to onboard third-party, let's say, service providers, sources of capital, and external experts. Because as projects move along to launch and they might have their own token, they might have some revenues, I think there's space to really engage those actors and work with them more closely. So adding these key pieces to the mix and making them available to the community is quite important. And third, it's also really continuously onboarding the new players that come in, right? As we go out, and as Adam talked about, we're talking to a bunch of projects, we're bringing them in. So onboarding them into the ecosystem, getting them acquainted is really going to be really important. I think the work in that area will increase. Then what we're thinking about as well, and we're thinking about this also for quite some time already, is actually increasing community involvement inside TouchPoint. And thinking about specific functions that community members could take over, because it's nice that we're driving this from the foundation side of things, right? But ultimately, crypto is fundamentally permissionless. So I think it would be really nice to also design TouchPoint in a more permissionless framework, right? So that community members can participate, they can take over some of the tasks, maybe the onboarding, right? Why not? It doesn't have to be one of us who goes out and talks to projects and brings them in. It can be anyone, right? As long as they're aligned with the ecosystem. Working with the projects one-to-one also is not really confined to us as a team. That could also be done by anyone, really. There, the question is more around how we can align incentives and how we can also make sure anyone who contributes can be rewarded, right? Because we're not expecting anyone to just contribute 20 hours a week without anything in return, right? And then lastly, what we're also thinking about is really either specializing a bit and building out some verticals a bit more. So it might be DeFi in the beginning, might be NFT finance, as Austin was saying. So either what we're interested in or where we see the market going. And then also considering going or adding some incubation or acceleration kind of functionalities, or let's say avenues inside TouchPoint, so that we can work more closely and actually commit more significant resources to working with specific projects if they're interested and if there's an overlap.
So am I hearing a TouchPoint DAO? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
I think depends a bit on how you define DAO. I think a Discord server with a multi-sig, probably not. If you're thinking in that direction. I think in terms of community involvement and actually decentralizing decision making, that's more feasible. I would also say that it's not going to be a shift in like from one day it's run by us and then the next day it's a DAO and everybody's doing everything, right? It's more about continuously onboarding additional people and trying to hand this off slowly, because I think no one is really going to be benefiting if it crumbles and we find out that there was a coordination problem after the fact, right? So I think it's about being more thoughtful about it and kind of going step by step, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Well, maybe one day.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure how much time we have left, but there is one question I want to ask in terms of, we've talked about how Touchpoint can really help the system, can really help grow the ecosystem, but what are the challenges that you guys are going to have to come over the next year or two, do you think?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is maybe the obvious one, that it's such a crowded space. So there's so many layer ones. Even if you do have superior tech, it's like, how do you get everyone's attention? Because without their attention, they're not going to look at you in the first place. So that is, I think, a very real challenge. I guess part of it is like an outreach challenge from our aspect. Part of it's a marketing thing. How do we kind of tell the world about this thing we've been building that we're all excited about? The other one to me is there's a lot of cool things on Web3 or in crypto, and they're not in the Shimmer ecosystem yet. And for instance, something like Gitcoin, like this is a product I think is really cool. It's great for funneling funds to certain projects and for charity and stuff like that. But these things pretty solely exist on Ethereum. I think you can pay in a couple other or a couple other currencies, but like they recently, I think, took ZK Sync off the latest grant round. So you pretty much had to pay really high fees to donate to a project. I think there's certain things like this that can be built out in our ecosystem. And what I liked about ours is that we had so many people from the IOTA community who were really passionate about staying and building something on top of it. And they not only just copied what was there, like Uniswap fork directly, but they also iterated on it and made like the next level of DeFi. The question in my head is that I'm always thinking about is like, okay, where do these next group of people come? Are there more people in the community who will rise up and do that once it becomes viable? Once, for instance, the Shimmer EVM goes live and they're like, okay, now it might be worth my time to build an application. Will it be the current teams that are there who might say, okay, IOTA is successful. Now my team can take a step back and smart contracts pretty much run themselves. Now I'm going to build out this other thing. This is actually kind of what I didn't plan on saying IOTA, but it's kind of interesting because that's kind of how it happened with TanglePay and Garrett, like starting with one thing. And then all of a sudden there's like 3 things in the system, 4 things, if you include one that's unannounced, that are all like value adds to it. So there might be the argument there that the next innovation will come from the previous people who just want to make the ecosystem as good as possible and also stake their claim in it. And the last is they come from outside. They either come from outside Web3 or in other Web3 projects, like these 2 recent game projects that we pulled into Touchpoint, or they come from outside of crypto altogether. And we find developers and are able to evangelize a bit about why we love crypto and get them on board. So this is, I think, the big challenge in my head is how to solve that.
And maybe just adding to that, I think it's both a challenge of actually approaching all of these different kind of developer pools, right, and talent pools, and then once you have them, and let's say ideally they would come from all of those things would happen, right? You have our established teams who go on to found new interesting applications. You have Web2 developers coming in, and I think it's on the one hand really nice that IOTA already had these groups merging and kind of mixing up in our existing community, because people were interested in machine economy and Web2 topics, but they're not only the crypto degens. Now you also have that influx of really crypto focused people, but the challenge then is once they are all here, then actually also aligning all of those groups and actually making sure they kind of work together and exchange their experience, because Web2 developers might have very relevant experience that they can contribute to crypto projects that are not necessarily crypto related, right? Actually, like building infrastructure at scale, that's really a Web2 topic as well. So then once you have all those groups, also facilitating the exchange between all of them.
I'm going to interject one time before Austin says his, which is one thing we haven't said now is that that is important, I think, is that Touchpoint also includes Web2 feeling like type projects. So it's not only crypto stuff. So we have people, there's one group that's trying to build out their own fiat on-ramp and essentially like making they're going to start pretty much with IOTA and Shimmer. So these things also exist. So it's not like Touchpoint is completely on the Web3 side. Sorry, go ahead, Austin.
No problem. Yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, I think it's how do we stand out? I mean, I think you talked about it a little bit, Adam, but how do we stand out amongst all these competitors? And I think that the way to do that is to try and figure out ways that we can actually be a bridge from not just Web 2 to our ecosystem, but how can we connect with the existing ecosystems elsewhere? So, I think that part of success in crypto is obviously bringing people onto our network, but also creating a bridge between our community and the existing communities around the space. And for me, what that looks like is trying to create this more composable future where, people can utilize our tech, they can utilize, another ecosystem's tech or whatever it may be, another protocol, and actually, pretty much build off of each other. And if we can kind of create a name for ourselves in that sense, where we are a necessary piece of technology that can boost someone else's success, or they can give an opportunity for other areas to grow, then we can kind of create a sustainable, or we can kind of create a niche in the market that we are necessary, and we are one of the most, I guess, needed things around, because I think that a lot of ecosystems are just doing it for themselves, and the big thing for me is trying to build connections with things that are already flourishing and things that are trying to be innovative in the future. So, how do we stand out? And the way to do that is to try and partner with, people that have a like-minded goal, which is to, create a more decentralized future and give access to, in my opinion, markets to people that don't necessarily have access to them. And that's more of the DeFi sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, how we stand out is pretty much the one thing that I like to focus on. And I think that, we're setting ourselves up for a pretty successful future, and that, what we're trying to build is very positive for our community, but also, for crypto as a whole. We have a good moral standing, I would say, in terms of what we're trying to go for. And I think that matters in terms of, in the wider crypto space.
Yeah. What do you mean by moral standing? Sorry.
Well, I think that, there's other ecosystems that are really just, opening the door, trying to allow people to raise as much capital as possible. And I think that, the IF and our team specifically, we're more focused on trying to bring people into this space that are trying to do it for the right reasons. And I think that's why I got into crypto years ago. And I think the last few years we've seen a little bit more of a shift towards, hey, where can we make the money? And I mean, in recent times, we've seen these meme coins like PayPay token, which is just, outrageous. That's not what crypto is about, but there's a piece of it that's obviously interesting, but it kind of strays away from the goals of what crypto was originally meant for. And I think that, what we do here is a lot more aligned with what the original concepts and goals were from the get-go of this sort of introduction to the decentralized digital economy.
Great. No, that's a useful explanation. Thanks for that, Austin.
All right. I really enjoyed the interview format that you guys provided for us. Very interesting points. There's maybe, because of time constraints, I will only ask you guys one more question, and then you can head over to your next meetings and stuff, because I think you're very busy at the moment. So in short, what would be the touch points if some, let's say, new aspiring IOTA devs or projects were looking for financing, or maybe even co-founders? Where should they be going or looking for to get in touch with that?
So you're asking how people enter Touchpoint? Is this what it is?
For example, yeah.
Okay.
What would be the easiest, in really a short, summarized answer if we want to?
You want to take this, Jamie? Just kidding. Yeah, so shimmer.network/touchpoint is our address, and you throw in the application there. You tell us a little bit about your project, and then we do a call with you to see what types of things you're wanting out of it. It might be, like you said, it might be networking. It might be strictly looking for funding. It's all included in there, and then either Austin, Chris, or I will have a call with you, and then see if you're a good fit and you want to be building on IOTA or Shimmer, and then we bring you in and set up a private channel. You have direct access to the IOTA Foundation, to the other teams in there as well, and then we do some events in there as well, and more planned in the future, which is what Austin's been working on. So that is how that works. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Just one thing for funding, check out Tangle Treasury,
which
is the community treasury that has just gone live, I think 2 weeks ago. They're open for applications.
All right, then I think that was the perfect answer for that question. And I will just say one more time, thank you to everyone.
Thanks. And thanks for IOTAPoet for interviewing us.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for everyone. Some useful answers.
Right, guys, then we might see us on the next TangleCon.
Okay, yeah, sounds